logicians, and we will continue with our Precalculus course. Today, we will see solving inequalities algebraically and graphically. We have our first exercise here. It says, solve the inequality algebraically. Write the solution in interval notation and draw its number line. So we're going to do three things. First, we're going to solve it, then we're going to graph it, and then we're going to write the interval notation. The order in which you do it, well, it's up to you. The solving part, yes, it has to be the first part. Now, let's start. It says x minus 5 over 4 inside absolute values is less or equal than 6. We solve absolute values one way. We separate them. We copy the way that you see your absolute value right now. X minus 5 over 4 is less or equal than 6. And then we find the opposite of it. So it will be x minus 5 over 4. And now, this was less than, now it's going to be greater or equal than, and it was positive 6, now it's going to be negative 6. The way that you solve it is like the way that you solve an equation. We send the 4 to the other side as a multiplication. 4 times 6 is 24. X minus 5 is less or equal than 24. And then we send the 5 to the other side as an addition. We will have x is less or equal than 24 plus 5. You solve this. X is less or equal than 29. Okay, we have our first answer. Now let's find the other one. The same thing. We send the 4 to the other side to multiply, but this time it's negative 6 times 4. So you're going to have x minus 5 is greater or equal than negative 24. We send the 5, the same process, to the other side as an addition. X is greater or equal than negative 24 plus 5. Now you have to make a subtraction because they have different signs, indicating that x is greater or equal than negative 19. Okay, so we have our two answers. Now let's make our graph. I'm going to change my color. We're going to put the line. We're going to graph. Okay, now, once we have our line, let's locate the points. It says that x is negative 19. Let's put it here, negative 19. And x is also 29. Now, because you have the equal sign, you have to include this as part of your answer. They both form part of your answer. Then you have to read it. It says that x is greater than negative 19. Numbers that are greater are to the right. It says that x is less than 29. Numbers that are less are to the left. If they meet, that means that your answer has to be somewhere in between negative 19 and 29, including negative 19 and 29. And because they are included in your interval, you're going to write them with brackets, brackets that are closing. And where do you start? You start with the lowest number, in this case, negative 19. Where do you continue? With the highest number, 29. And since you cannot continue from there, you close it here. And these would be your answers. With this, we're going to continue with the next type of exercise. Okay, in this exercise, it says, solve the inequality using algebra to solve a corresponding equation, or the corresponding equation. Now, you have this equation here, okay, that is an inequality. Since the leading coefficient is negative 3, I like to make it positive by multiplying a negative 1 to the whole inequality. If you multiply a negative 1 to a whole inequality, your new inequality stays as 3x to the square plus 5x, you change the sign of every number, minus 2, and the inequality also changes. It was less than, now it becomes greater than 0. With this information, now we're going to use something that we call factoring. Okay, factoring by trinomial. You're going to find two numbers that multiply will give you the leading coefficient. In this case, 3 times 1 is 3, and x times x is x to the square. And two numbers that multiply will give you 2. 1 times 2. How am I going to check if this factorization is correct? I cross multiply. 3 times 2 would be 6, and you include the x. 1 times 1 is 1, and you include the x. I need the answer of this checking part to be the number of the middle. I need this to be 5x. Which one has to be negative? The multiplication of the 1. That means that is this one. You copy the 2 factorized already from the inequality. 3x minus 1. Now we're not going to use the less than. We're going to use the equal to solve for x. And then we copy the other 2. That was x plus 2. And it's also equal to 0. You solve for x in both cases. 3x is equal to, the 1 moves to the other side as an addition, the 3 moves to the other side as a division. This one is 1/3, and x equals negative 2 because you move it to the other side as a subtraction. Now, you have your values for x. Remember that this is a quadratic graph. It looks like a U. You need 2 values of x at least, and 1 value of y. In other words, your y-intercept that we represent as a b. Which is the y-intercept? The y-intercept is the one or the number that has no variable. In this case, the negative 2. That would be your y-intercept. If we locate those points, negative 1, negative 2 for x, and 1/3, very close to the 0, and we locate negative 2 here. These are the 3 points that we found. Since the inequality does not have an equal sign, your graph has to be a dotted graph looking like a U. Once you have your graph, you have already your solutions for x. You're still missing to write your interval notation. Okay, so to write the interval notation, we are going to concentrate on our graph. We are going to choose numbers that are inside or numbers that are outside to check where is our interval notation located at. So we're going to choose first numbers that are inside. I will choose this negative 1. If I substitute, I'll change my color. If I substitute negative 1 into this inequality, 3 times negative 1 to the square plus 5 times negative 1 minus 2 is greater than 0. And this tells me that is true. That means that my interval is inside that U. Okay, so let's start solving this. This will be 3 minus 5 minus 2 is greater than 0. 3 minus 5 is negative 2 minus 2 is negative 4 greater than 0. This is not true, so we're not going to use our interval there. That means that our interval has to be outside, but let's check it. Let's use the number 1 now, that is outside the graph. 3 times 1 to the square plus 5 times 1 minus 2 is greater than 0. This is 3 plus 5 minus 2 is greater than 0. 3 plus 5 is 8. 8 minus 2 is 6, and that is greater than 0. Is true. That means that your interval is outside. Okay, the first number would be the least number. In this case, it would be from the negative infinite because it's the least number that you're going to use. Infinites are always going to be in parentheses, or they can also be in brackets that are open. Comma. To the next point. Your next point would be negative 2. Then, since you continue from 1/3, you put a U for union, and it's 1/3, comma, until where you finish. Okay, since you started in negative infinite, you're going to finish in the positive infinite. And this is your interval. Now let's continue with the next type of exercise. This will be our last exercise. It says, a projectile is launched straight up from ground level with an initial velocity of 288 feet per second. Letter A. Okay, they give us a formula here. No, this formula is given. It says S is equal to negative 16t to the square plus initial velocity times time plus the initial position. Okay. If what we have at the beginning, it says a projectile is launched straight up from ground level. From ground level means that our initial position is equal to 0. In this case, feet, is equal to 0 feet. Now, then it says that the initial velocity is represented by V, and a 0 is 288 feet per second. Letter A is asking, when will the projectile's height above ground be 1,152 feet? That would be your S. What you're looking for, 1,152 feet, what you're looking for is for your time. Let's change your color. Now, if we substitute, we will have 1,152, that is your S, is equal to negative 16 t to the square plus the initial velocity, that is 288, in this case t, and this is 0, we don't need to put it. If we solve for t, we move them to this side, making it equal to 0, we will have 16t to the square minus 288t. You change your signs when they move to the opposite side, plus 1,152, and now everything is equal to 0. You check if it can be factorized. The first thing that I'm going to do here is that I'm going to simplify. All the numbers here are divided by 16. So I will divide every number by 16 to make it simpler. If I divide 16 by 16 is t to the square. 288 divided by 16 would be 80t. And 1,152 divided by 16 is 72. Now it's equal to 0. It's easier to factorize two numbers that multiply give me t to the square, t and t. Two numbers that multiply give me 72, 12 and 6. If I cross multiply, this is 6t, 12t. I need this answer to be negative 18t. So that means that both of them have to be negative. We are going to copy them. T minus 12 horizontally is equal to 0, and t minus 6 is equal to 0. We solve for t is 12, and we solve for t is 6. This indicates that the projectile is at 1,152 feet twice. At 6 when it's going up, or at 6 seconds when it's going up, and at 12 seconds when it's coming back down. That answers letter A. Letter B says, when will the projectile's height above ground be at least 1,152? It would be the same answer as letter A. It would be above the ground between the 6 and the 12 seconds, including the 6 and 12. So that would be your answer. Between 6 and 12, including 6 and 12. Okay, that would be for this class. Thank you for watching, and don't forget, math is magic.